Members, I struggled a lot to figure out what to say today, mainly because so much has already been said. And I was up till 4:30 this morning trying to think, what could I say to my colleagues to be more persuasive, to help draw empathy, compassion from my peers, to defend the millions of women and pregnant people across the country and the hundreds of thousands here in Florida that deserve access to care. And I know many folks have their minds made up, but I know some folks aren't even here. But I do believe in the power of persuasion. If I didn't, I wouldn't pick up this microphone. I wouldn't keep walking into this chamber. And so early this morning, I sat there as my sister fell asleep next to me, thinking what to say. And I started thinking about my mom, who I know I talk about a lot in this chamber, but everything I am or hope to be, I owe to my angel mother. And the first time I learned about abortion was actually from my mom. You know, she had this jewelry box that was one of those old-time boxes. You kind of held like a suitcase, lots of layers in it. And so my sister and I would always play with it. And there were so many trinkets inside and just jewels my mom had, picked up from Iran and the United States, and we would try it on and just play dress up with it. And one night, my sister and I were sitting there with my mom and my brother, and she told us, I really wanted to have another Anna Ida aria, but we just can't afford it yet. That was her way of telling us that she had an abortion. She was 40 when she had my sister and I, which we were her miracle babies. She wanted a girl. She got two. Lucky for Florida, there's two of us. And this was her way of telling us that it wasn't a decision that she made lightly, and it was one that she made as a mother to take care of the children that she had. It wasn't a reckless decision. It wasn't an irresponsible decision. She was in a marriage, and she made that decision. And fast forward to 2004, where now it's me taking care of my mom, who's dying from colon cancer. And I was 13 years old when I lost her. And the farthest thing from my mind was dating, was relationships. I hadn't even started my period yet. I was just navigating what life would be like without my mom. And so that is where Planned Parenthood came into my life. And Planned Parenthood saves lives. And I understand the rhetoric, but I mean, Planned Parenthood is an organization that truly saves lives. And I walked into that health center when I was 18 years old because I needed help. I did not have access to comprehensive sex ed. I had no one to talk to. My sister and I didn't even have basic access to pads and tampons, where we had to tie sweaters around our waist to protect ourselves from being embarrassed. And so when I walked to that health center, I was scared. It was my first time ever going into a medical facility by myself. I had no idea what to expect. And I left not only feeling deep sense of gratitude for the compassionate providers that were there, but I left with a method of contraception that was right for me. And as I held that little pill pack in my hand, I felt the weight of generations of women who came before me to fight so I could have that moment of peace and that moment of control and empowerment to decide my destiny. And I realized quickly that not every person had that access, that I was the exception, not the rule. And so I committed my advocacy to helping women and girls know their options, to ensuring that they could make the same decisions that were informed and thoughtful and intentional that I was making. So we did all the things at UCF. I passed out free condoms. We tried to raise awareness about prevention. And I volunteered at Planned Parenthood as a health center escort, walking patients inside when there's protesters outside. Because I respect the First Amendment right, but it's hella hard to walk into a health center when you have people screaming at you. And so my compassion for this work comes from my own lived experiences, because that wasn't just a medical appointment, it was destiny for me to be there at that time to fall into this work. I used to be an advocate in these halls talking about reproductive rights, and now I have the unique honor to walk into this chamber with you to advocate for reproductive rights. And I worked at Planned Parenthood for 6 years doing just that. Got my 2 masters at UCF, started my PhD, and decided to run for office, not knowing that this would be the destiny that I would be part of a process that would strip away bodily autonomy for people like my mom and for the people who will come after me. And it is a devastating vote. It is a heavy, heavy vote. And I don't use those words to be dramatic. Y'all know I try to tone myself on this floor because I have so much respect for the institution and respect for my colleagues. But this is a devastating vote. This bill requires a significant burden of proof for survivors of violence. We already talked about that. But I want to remind you that even with exceptions for rape and incest, if there are no doctors in Florida to provide care, exceptions don't exist. They're not real. They might exist in paper, but good luck finding a doctor to provide you with an abortion when you have a 6-week ban, because all the patients have to go somewhere else, which means the doctors have to go somewhere else too. So even with exceptions, you're not going to have providers to provide you with care. And despite the confident remarks by our bill sponsors that this will not impact wanted pregnancies, we know that's not true. We see the results already with a 15-week ban. There's no way it doesn't get worse with a 6-week ban. And to remember that bans affect every person, but those who will be most marginalized are people who already struggle to access care, whether it's because you don't got money, whether it's because you don't have transportation, you don't speak English, maybe you're undocumented, maybe you are living with disabilities, you're a survivor of sexual assault. I'm a firm believer that bodily autonomy should not be dictated by how much money you have or where you live. And this bill, just like the 15-week ban, punishes poor people for being poor, because those of means will be fine. I'll figure out a way to leave the state if I have to make this decision, but others won't be able to do that. I know so many of us have values around the concept of freedom. And so what does freedom look like for you? It might be the beautiful colors of the American flag, red, white, and blue. A flag that each one of us pledge ourselves to every morning we're in this chamber, one where families like mine traveled thousands of miles and sacrificed so much to call this country, this free country, home for them. Maybe it's your First Amendment rights. I know y'all love your First Amendment rights, I do too. Maybe it's that right to carry a firearm. You have your definitions of freedom. For me, freedom is a lot of things, but fundamentally, it is the notion of self-determination, endless and abundant joy, and the ability to decide my future with the people that I trust. People like my sister, people like my friends, people like my faith leaders, my doctors, and no offense, not fellow politicians. And so I want people who are watching us right now to know that you have people fighting for you. And if you need an abortion, visit abortionfinder.org. Because regardless of what happens in this state, we're going to make sure folks still have access. And if that means you have to travel somewhere else, we will find ways to help. If you want to help someone find a place to get an abortion, support abortion funds. These are private funds. Don't worry, members. They're privately funded. But they are organizations that try to help folks navigate these barriers that we're creating. The majority of Floridians agree that abortion must remain safe and legal. And we might be the minority in this chamber, but we're not the minority outside. And I know today is hard. My God, today is hard. But just remember that some may try to bury us, but don't forget that we're those seeds. Please vote no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.